Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 version of Tekla Users Day. My name is Tariq Al-Masri, and I would like to thank you all for making the time to attend this great event, which we've been doing for a number of years. So today, I'm glad to be moderating a very interesting panel discussion about a very interesting topic, which has been picking up in a wide spectrum across our various regions, both in the Middle East and India. And it's related to the infrastructure development, which we can see all around us, a lot of infrastructure type of projects that have been done across the different countries, because that's one thing which is a main driver for the country's growth, GDP growth, and it's a big area of investment by all the governments. So in a sense, at the beginning, I would say, I would like to introduce our guest panelists. And first of all, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Anup Singh. Mr. Anup Singh, he is the head of bridges from Kowi in India. And he's got an extensive experience in designing of structures on highways and rail projects. He's been involved in key programs and projects in India. One of the key projects that he's been involved in is the Mumbai Railway. And he brings to the table a number of years of experience. He holds a bachelor degree in civil engineering, and he also holds a master's degree in structural engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology. We also have Dr. Daniel Lurt. Dr. Daniel is a civil engineer in the roads department in the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure in the United Arab Emirates. He heads up the project of implementation and installation of asset management system in the ministry, which has been a program that was awarded a Global Road Achievement Award in 2019 in the World Congress of Infrastructure in Abu Dhabi. He's also bringing an experience in developing technical assessment for annual budgets for the assets and preventative maintenance, intelligent traffic systems, asset management systems in the operation and development, traffic and safety evaluation, and many other expertise related to the infrastructure development and projects. We also have from the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, Ms. Solga Samahi. She is a civil engineer in the ministry, and she's also responsible in managing the project of in the Federal Road and Assessment Department in terms of implementation of the asset management system. She brings to the table an experience in the road asset management, routine maintenance under the performance of based maintenance contracts, applying surging for innovation solutions and implement those into the federal road network and the workflow in their process. She's also developing specifications for the successful and effective implementation of technology within the authority. And she's part of developing the UAE asset management strategy team, which is looking after the entire country's asset management for the infrastructure. We also have joining from Sistra IBT, Sistra International Bridges Technologies, Mr. Octaviano Paraiso. He's joining us from Brazil today, and Octaviano brings to the table an experience of over 20 years in designing and construction of significant bridges projects throughout the world. So Sistra covers a lot of projects, not just in the Middle East region. They have multiple projects all across the globe. And Octaviano is actually the Assistant Vice President from Sistra for the production. His leadership and experience was instrumental in delivering a lot of key projects, as mentioned earlier. From Trimble, we have Mr. Gabriel Neves. Gabriel is a big advocate of using technology, and he is actually the evangelist and YouTuber behind the YouTube channel called Ministry of Bridges. Gabriel started his career in the early 90s, where everyone was using the manual way in putting the plans and drafting the drawings. And then when the millennium started, he moved into the 3D world and started looking into different technologies and various solutions which can help the industry and the construction industry in advancing the use of technology in driving more efficiency and effectiveness in the process. As mentioned, he is very passionate about bridges because from his perspective, bridges help in connecting us as individuals on the personal level as well as on the professional level. So they are a key part in our life. And that's why he dedicated a lot of his knowledge into creating that YouTube channel, which I'd invite everyone to have a look at it. He joined Trimble in 2018, and since then, he is leveraging all that experience and knowledge in helping Trimble team to expand and advance our solutions and collaborative solutions for the bridges and infrastructure work. I also like to welcome Mr. Paul Wallet. He's the area regional director for both India and the Middle East. He looks after different businesses from Trimble within those two regions. And he brings to the table over 33 years of experience in the construction industry and civil structural engineering. He's worked directly in construction for 8 years, and then after that, he spent 25 years in the construction solution providing, where he spent a lot of time with Trimble and Tekla, and he brings an experience that is global. So he worked in the Middle East, he worked in the United States and Europe as well. So with that, I would like to start going through the discussion about what we're going to be talking about today. And my first question will be directed to Mr. Paul Wallet. So the first point is related to the infrastructure industry outlook and the current scenario of views on the industry and how we see the market for that industry now. So Paul, being one of the leading technology and solution providers in the region, and since you're dealing with various players in the infrastructure industry, how, in your view, do you see the industry progressing in the current two regions, Middle East and India? And also, if you may shed the light on how does the current scenario that we're all, living now in terms of the COVID-19 situation and the lockdowns here and there, how those are currently impacting the current projects in the region?
Okay, hello everybody, and thanks for the panel. A really good question, Tariq, to start off with, and I think this kind of sets really where we've come from and where we are today in the current economic climate. I think first and foremost, the current situation is really played heavily on the infrastructure project awards in the region, without doubt. Although, those projects continue to go because most were seen as essential work. But, for a few months at least, it was down tools for some time. So it did have some impact. When we look at and I was looking at some reports online, what we look at when we look at the activity index, it's looking a bit more positive when we look this year, and I'm talking about UAE specifically in this case. So we've seen some positive gains. So in Q1, it was about 3% more positive in terms of the construction, and Q2, it's like around 8%. So we can start to see a gradual lift out of those doldrums of the situation that we're all in. So, compared to last year in 2020. In terms of Saudi, though, I mean, that ranked, when they looked globally, they were actually ranked third globally. And of course, in Saudi, we've got a lot of giga projects, a lot of infrastructure that's being laid down or being executed because of these amazing big investments, $1.3 trillion of investment that's going on there. So a lot of focus are really, projects are really focused in the project tendering stage and quite a lot in execution. In terms of what we do here, let's say within the UAE, around $120 billion for the UAE is focused on the infrastructure development. And maybe Daniel later on, you can come collaborate these figures or not in the position that he's sitting in. And then if we take Saudi, that's looking over the next few years to attract about $425 billion worth of investment on the infrastructure. The UAE is kind of three key areas. So we're looking at ICT, information and communications technology. So a big ramp up in the smart technologies and communication side. Then energy is a big area. So we've got the nuclear power plant and a lot of solar plants going in. Another area is agribusiness, is another big aspect where we're looking at vertical farming is coming in an agribusiness setup. There's the Al Maktoum International Airport, which, the expansion that may be a little bit paused, but over time, that's a lot of investment going into that. And so those, and the other areas is the rail infrastructure, is the big current one, which is Etihad Rail, the network construction that's going on. That's about $11 billion of expansion plans, as well. Dubai Metro's $23 billion. And most recently on Etihad Rail, it was just announced the largest section of tunneling had been completed, which is about 1.8 kilometers, which is the largest tunneling project in the Gulf region. And this is really connecting Dubai with Fujairah, or Sharjah with Fujairah. And Etihad Rail, that's more for moving materials and stock as opposed to people. But in the future, it may have a focus on people transport as well. And that particular package is 145 kilometers long, but there's, I think, about another 8 or so tunnels to complete and 54 bridges to go in. And as well, it mentioned about a number of crossings for animals. So we're looking at sustainability. When we go to the mountainous areas and the valleys, we're looking at sustaining that side. Really some challenges that we have seen. I think the bigger ones that everybody's experienced is kind of financial restraints, and particularly cost of materials are seen as kind of the main impediments where profit margins are quite subdued, due to that higher cost of materials, and obviously inflation is starting to hit there as well. And the other aspect in terms of challenges would be the supply chain bottlenecks. But having said that, over the next 12 months, it's looking or anticipated to be improving, and particularly, when we're looking at Saudi as a very optimistic area within the Middle East region.
Yeah, and I think also, sorry for interrupting, it's worth mentioning also Egypt as one of the key areas where we can witness a lot of infrastructure projects being announced, primarily on the railway. So they have the high-speed rail, they have the metro link, and there is the rail between the port on the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. So all those projects are happening in our region, and I think it's worth putting that subject under the spotlight to make sure that we mention and we educate the market on how we can actually help as technology providers in terms of driving better efficiency and better process and innovation in delivering those.
Yeah, and out of those kind of key GCC countries, Egypt has actually been one of the top performers, it seems, as well, in terms of their development and construction industry and projects that they have in the pipeline. If I shift then over to India, because obviously we've got a very big India audience here as well. There's been a huge amount of investment in the infrastructure there. So we're looking at roads, rails, some airport, a lot of investment going into the hydropowers, thermal and energy sector with nuclear housing. So a lot going on, and it has been that way for quite some time. It's really continued heavy investment in the infrastructure, multiple lines on the National High-Speed Railway, and then we've got the Mumbai Trans-Harbour Link as well, something else I'm sure is going to be discussed. And one thing that they published, and I found really interesting, was that they have the world record for laying the most amount of road in 24 hours. So they actually laid I think 2.5 kilometers of 4-lane concrete road in 24 hours. And then in a single lane, 26 kilometers in 21 hours. That's just phenomenal amount of bitumen and tarmac, that they're laying. And what they are looking at is, and I found that the Minister of Roads and Transport, Nitin Gadkari, he's got a goal to reach 100 kilometers per day in laying road out in India. So that's fantastic. So it's what India's seen is going to be the world's largest construction market by 2022 as well. So that's their goal. And they plan to spend about $1.4 trillion by 2023 on railways and infrastructure. And on the railways alone, they're looking at $750 billion alone spending. And we're very heavily involved with a lot of the railway works that are going on at this present point in time. So really at the outset, that's where we see the position right now in kind of the pre-construction and post-construction, related to COVID.
Yeah, thank you very much for this intel, Paul. It's really valuable. And since we ended up in your conversation talking about India, so I would like to shift to the second part of the conversation, and I would like to invite Mr. Anup Singh to address this part of the conversation. So this is related to how the engineering segment, or let's say the engineering consultants, are leveraging the innovation in terms of driving more sustainability in terms of project delivery. So, Mr. Anup, in terms of the fact that you've been providing consulting to various infrastructure projects, both on the individual level and the professional level, not to mention a key project and a complex transportation project like the Mumbai Trans-Harbour Link, can you please shed some light in terms of how do you harness the various technology solutions in driving innovation and sustainable value in your various projects?
Yeah, when we talk of, let's say, complex infrastructure projects of the type you mentioned, timing is the key, and the delivery depends on active participation from all the stakeholders who are involved in the project. And the total focus should be on the timely delivery of the project. Among other contributions, one of the important contribution of technology is to generate the analysis and BIM model for the structure. The structures which we are constructing in urban areas today, they include modeling of complex geometry. The alignment which we face in urban areas have complex double curvature. It also has, merging and demerging portions of superstructure. So unless we model it accurately in the 3 dimensions, it becomes difficult to get the geometry right in the first go. So when we model it correctly, the levels extraction and the other information extraction, that becomes very easy, and any changes in the geometry becomes very easy to make and control. Beyond that, there are areas which have very congested reinforcement in terms of both untensioned and tensioned reinforcement. So these areas are like pier heads, cable anchor zones, and diaphragms. What happens is to conceive and to draw it up in a 2-dimensional drawing is difficult and takes a lot of time. And an equal amount of time would be spent in deciphering that information, say at the checkers end, at the approvers end, and even at the contractors end to build it. And then it will also invite time to discussion to clarify what was the intent of the design. So in the projects where I have been involved, and we have generated a 3D model with accurate geometry and a clash-free reinforcement area, this time we have seen that it has been reduced to a large extent because everything has been accurately modeled, and it has eliminated any hard and soft clashes, even going ahead of the site. So that's what I see as one of the very important parameters, that if we can model the structure in 3D, have it parametric so that we can change the inputs, it will give us huge benefit in terms of overall time saving on the project.
Exactly. It saves time and effort on both the engineering and the delivery side. Yeah, that's good. Which brings me actually to the other part of the conversation, and I would like to ask Octaviano if you may, to step in to this one, since we're talking about the engineering side. So, Octaviano, since yourself and Sister IBT has been leading in terms of delivering design and engineering for various projects in terms of bridges around the world. And we're talking about connected construction as a process here, and bridges are actually connecting the different parts of whatever infrastructure project that we're talking about. So, in your journey delivering those projects, would you like to shed some light in terms of how, or let's say, what challenges you might have faced in terms of designing bridges, and following that, doing the construction of those bridges and maintaining those?
Yes, Tarek. I agree with Anup as well, related to the challenge related to the geometry. Today, as you know, infrastructure modeling is like horizontal. Horizontal modeling is very complicated because we talk about kilometers of alignment, and compared to the vertical alignment, vertical buildings, for example, vertical modeling, because alignments, are, if we're talking about global locations as well, and this is the size of the models can be very considerable, big, and this causes a huge problem. Also, the duplications and standardizations when we come to modeling. And infrastructure today, we could say we're a little bit behind, compared to the buildings because of those reasons, the difficulties we have today to model and the very low level of duplications. And so you can imagine, in a viaduct today, we have like 3D alignment, to following the curvature of the alignments. We have vertical alignment, horizontal alignments. The deck is varying, not just horizontal transversely, but also in the depth of the structures. And all this together, this causes a massive work for us when it comes to the beam modeling of those viaducts. And then we have the part of the type of bridges. I haven't done any bridge that repeats all the time. Every bridge is different. And we have custom placed bridges, we have steel bridges, we have precast segmental bridges, viaducts, and then when it comes to reinforcement, it's pretty much what Anup said. Is reinforcements in bridges are very complicated. We have a lot of congestions, a lot of clashes to solve. And we want to make sure when we give these models to the client, the models can be constructible. So, for example, if I take a simple example of a viaduct, it's not just like you follow the alignment and everything's fine. Like a viaduct is span by span. We have cast, match cast, and bulkhead head face. So it's not just a trapezoid of the segment. We have like a proper rules to follow when it comes to the segmental bridges. So if we want to really give a model to the contractor today to build it, we need to make sure we model it not just for the sake of modeling, but modeling accurately, because we want to use this further down the line. So we need to be careful when we are modeling bridges, because it's not just that easy because of all the curvatures we are talking about. And then comes to the when it comes to the software, we need to find a very good software for that, because as I mentioned, there is a very low level of duplication when it comes to bridges and viaducts. So it's very hard to create a very complex library, because next bridge will be completely different. So we need to be careful where we spend the energy today. And I think the success, just to conclude, the success of this is we relate a lot in the tools. Today, the tools, without good tools to help us to model those viaducts is a very complicated. The tools today, we are using probably the same as Anup, we are using Grasshopper with like a parametric model together with Tekla, because the other challenge we face in the infrastructure, the alignment is never frozen, so it's always changing. And if we model things manually, this is just not possible anymore because of the time consuming. Like as I mentioned, time is money today, so we cannot lose that time, and we need to be ahead of our competitors. So we definitely need to go ahead. And then comes, as well as understanding the client needs, make sure we are not modeling things we don't need to do. So sometimes we are modeling too many things, and sometimes it's not required. So we need to also have a full communication with the client to understand, all the requirements on that. Then last 2 points, I would say qualified employees is very important. We need to keep mentoring them because they might model the bridge, but they're not modeling correct, and that again will become a rework for us down the line, And one more point is related to technologies moving very fast. So if we don't keep updating ourselves, today is Grasshopper with Tekla, tomorrow can be something else, and we cannot. We just have to go, and this is the success. I think the secret for the success of any project today to make sure we follow those steps. Yeah.
Exactly, and they have to go in the same pace to make sure that delivery is ongoing in the right way. Which actually, let's say, sticking to the bridges topic and maybe opening up a little bit wider, because we have multiple stakeholders, as both Mr. Anoop and Octaviano mentioned. So this actually mandates the fact that there should be like a proper common data environment, which is able to handle all that mass of data in terms of a workflow between the different stakeholders. And that will, in terms of helping the owners at a later stage to be able to manage their assets in the proper way, and also maintain them and operate them in the right way moving forward. So if I may ask Gabriel on this point, since you're very vocal and very passionate about putting in place a very strong common data environment that will be able to capture and handle all that workflow between the different stakeholders, how do you see, or how does an active advocate of BRIM, if we introduce that terminology, which stands for Bridge Information Modeling, through the Ministry of Bridges initiative, how do you feel the industry can optimally leverage the technical or the technology to build a world-class bridge infrastructure?
Okay, thanks for having me. Let's divide this question into the first part for the common data environment. I think the definition of common data environment depends who is looking at it. Or even if you go to the PIS 1192, there is a definition. Other people, they think something else. In my case, let's say the common data environment is a place where you put all the information regarding a project. We're talking about files, models, documents, standards, and all that. Now, I don't agree calling a common data environment for a document control system. For me, that is something else. Or for me, a common data environment, we should be able to read and open those documents. For instance, if I have access of a common data environment of certain project, I shouldn't have the software that the designer used to model the road or to model the bridge. That common data environment should open me doors, maybe through IFC, to have a visualizer in order to interrogate the model and have access to the attributes and so on. But just saying this, we could have just one discussion with many people not agreeing with me. So that is my point of view. For me, common data environment is a place where you control the data, you have everything on it, and you should have access to interrogate the data at any moment. And of course, control the hierarchy and the accesses and so on. For the second half of the question, if you look into the workflow, so we have the road data, bring the road data into the BIM model, develop the model of, in this case, of the bridge, send it for construction, fabrication, or erection, do it, and then apply the changes. In the end, you have the as-built, and then deliver the as-built for maybe operations and maintenance, and then all the workflow will finish when they demolish. Unfortunately, no one demolishes bridges anymore. Unfortunately, they fall by themselves, which is a disaster. But officially, the workflow finish with the demolition of the bridge. Now, if we whatever we are doing, the software and hardware, the technology, it's there. In each step of the way, there is a specific technology to help. Maybe here and there, the technology needs to be developed further, or the software or the hardware. But I think for the majority of the workflow, we have a specific technology. Now, wherever is, so maybe great beam software, augmented reality, total stations, robot dogs, or AI for design routines, you need to measure the results after you implement proper the processes, the training, and you follow some certain standards. So to close this long answer, I think we are already there. Many countries are already using and taking advantage of these technologies, hardware and software, but much more needs to be done to make this a truly global thing, this BIM or Bridges Information Modeling or BIM. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Gabriel.
Thanks.
Valuable answer indeed. So moving the stake now towards our beloved owner. And for that, I would like to invite Daniel Lurt to attend to this part of the conversation, if I may. So when we take it from the owner perspective, and how does the technology help down the line in terms of helping the owners and operators in managing the assets that we're actually constructing or creating. So we're seeing and witnessing around the world, a lot of governments are paying more and more attention towards building a smart infrastructure. And I think, or I believe, the United Arab Emirates is actually leading the way in terms of developing the plan and putting the foundations and actually executing on those in creating a smart infrastructure versus smart city. We see that in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, all around the country. And we're setting an example to other countries within the region when it comes to this point specifically. So if we take that as an example and say, from the owner perspective or the government's perspective, driving this or those different technologies, if we mention like asset management, off-site construction, maintaining the life cycle of projects down the line, what steps do you see in your point of view that needs to be taken in order to stay on top of such mandates and requirements, which initially get set by the owner and the engineers?
Thank you. First, I want to thank the opportunity to participate in this very interesting forum. I will speak from the perspective that we have in the operation and maintenance section in the roads department in the ministry. As you mentioned, as owners, we are interested in having the most information we can have from our assets. And I think the basic step on this is exactly what the ministry did at that time, maybe 9 years back. It's to recognize that we need to have that information now. How to collect this information is one of the first challenges we have. You know, we need to create a full database of the assets. We need to know what are we going to do with this database, and the ways to collect the database and the ways we are going to process that database and analyze it are basic, no? And then technology is a key point here, because I remember when, for example, we used to see regarding the roads infrastructure, we used to record the images of the road with that famous video tapes, and that was our main tool to see how the road was. Now we move in technology to see how the road is, in some cases real life, and we can let's say improve the ways of maintaining the assets in faster way, because we have, as it was mentioned before from one of our colleagues here in the panel, we have tools, and that tools allows us to manage the database in a better way, a huge database that we can process, we can definitely analyze, and from that perspective, we can create the proper algorithms to manage in better way the assets. No, and this is the loop in which we have been moving in this last 9 years. I have to say that for everyone, when we start in a point, we need to learn from ourselves. That means that we need to know, in this case, we need to know our infrastructure. We need to know how it behaves according with the conditions of the place, according with the conditions that we have from the traffic perspective. And we need to allocate the technologies that we need to know that. No? It can be the traffic data collection with the, let's say, advanced tools and advanced hardware in the road itself. Can be ITS, can be the data collection with high performance vehicles, and all this allows to manage the assets in proper way. No? And I think about the management of the assets. My colleague, Engineer Soga Salem, she can elaborate more in deep, but definitely in the ministry we took that steps in 9 years. And what I can say is that from that point, when we start from scratch until now, the time passed really quick. And because, as you mentioned before, United Arab Emirates, it's a country that wants to lead in the field. We had the chance to improve really quickly.
Yeah.
And this is as well as a challenge to improve in that way so fast. No?
Yeah.
I would like to let my colleague Engineer Soga to explain more about how once we have all this data collected, how we do to manage all this information, which is huge, by the way.
Yes, please. So, Engineer Soga, if you may step in.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. So, I would just like to add on my colleague Danielle. I feel like because UAE is a young country.
I think you are on a mute, Engineer Soga. So
there is a small volume. The volume is low.
Can you hear me now better?
I think you're still on mute. We're not able to hear you.
He's not unmuted, but we cannot hear her. Maybe the volume.
Yeah, the volume is low. I can listen, but far away.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
Better.
So if you just come closer to the mic, please.
Yeah. So if I would just add to my colleague Danielle that because UAE is a young country and the technologies are moving really fast, the most important step we need is to define our strategy and objectives, because the technologies are moving really fast and we cannot keep track. But if we establish our strategy and what do we need and how to reach there with engaging with the different stakeholders and stating our objectives, then we can reach our goals in a better way. And actually, we would benefit from all the technologies and concepts we want to apply.
Yeah, that's a very good point to highlight. And it's actually related to the second question, which I had. So if we kind of scale up the conversation a little bit and talk about those infrastructure projects. So we're not building them just for the fun of it. Sometimes it is, but like the actual thing is that those projects, by the end of the day, they're a main driver behind growing the national GDP wherever we go. In simple words, when you construct a railroad or a motorway or a bridge, you're actually facilitating a smoother transportation path between two different points or multiple points. And that consequently will impact the trade between those different points and a smooth flow of goods and services between the different parts of the country. So this is like a huge step that each country tries to take in order to facilitate a better growth in terms of their GDP. And in that, it's a big investment where there is an accompanying type of investment coming into leveraging the technology to drive that infrastructure project implementation. So, and it has to keep or continue in the same pace. So from the perspective of an owner and engineering, I would like maybe to hear the opinion from both Dr. Daniel and Mr. Anup Singh on what challenges do you see or you're currently facing in both regions, let's say the India and the Middle East, in terms of how the technology investment going in the same pace that is required when we talk about growing our infrastructure projects and adding more projects.
Thank you. I wasn't named first. That's why I'm taking the word now. Thank you. Speaking from the engineering perspective as an operator of infrastructure, Of course, I will try to maximize the investment the government is spending on the maintenance and management of the assets. No, I will love to receive every year 1,000 million dirhams. I will use them definitely. No, but I think there is also part of us that we need to communicate with all these technologies we mentioned before, how to invest and why we need to invest. No, and this is something which is basic. I mean, currently now, whatever we are doing in the asset management policy here and development, we can say that we reached the point in which we can plan and define the investment we need for the coming years. And this communication needs to be transferred to the right management persons in our organization. If we explain the main reasons of why we need this investment, the investment will come, because definitely in one country in which you see, for example, that in some roads that we have, the traffic growth reaches sometimes 7-8% compared with the previous year, which is a very high amount of traffic ongoing, and which shows as well that the impact of, I mean, it shows the impact of economic growth, but then you can justify that investment that definitely will come because the country needs it. It's not because I want it, it's because I'm showing that we need to do that. No? And I can show as well as an operator what will happen if we don't do that. So all this perspective needs to be justified with all these tools we spoke before. If I can justify this, then the investment will come. And again, I'm talking about I'm talking under the perspective of a maintenance and operation engineer. When we come to the management, they need to justify based on other parameters that reaches the strategy level, which we can justify as well.
Exactly, and that's where you start sensing the return of investment part of how that project is helping.
Correct.
So yeah, back to Mr. Anup Singh on the second point.
I think to take a leap in technology, we need more critical mass in various fields like manpower, or if we talk of young engineers, we already have that critical mass of engineers who are becoming passionate about the infrastructure industry. In India, there has been also a marked improvement in the type of structures which we are building, like cable stayed or extra dosed or segmental bridges. These are now being constructed everywhere in India. There is clear will from the government also towards the innovation in all these projects. But what we need to, in my view, what we need to devote is big investment in terms of time for getting these complex jobs and pulling out innovation aspect in it. I mean, if we are trying to create an environment where we are challenging ourselves and challenging what is being done, in simple words, we need to think if we are too busy to replicate the time-tested technologies, or are we getting thoughts in our mind like, can there be a material which replaces concrete? Can we make directly the shop drawings in 3D and no cutting, no cage preparation at site? Can we move towards delivering only a model to the client? Is our project monitoring real time? All those questions, if we are not creating an environment where we are getting these thoughts in our minds, then we need to relook at our approach and spend more time in sharpening our axe before we start cutting things.
Exactly, and
that's my view.
These are very, very important points and key challenges which we're seeing more and more coming from different stakeholders. And I think you did, both of you, a great job in highlighting those different parts. And if I may jump to Paul now from a technology provider perspective, Paul, what in your perspective do you see that there are available in the market in terms of current technologies that can address some or most of those different challenges faced by engineers and owners. And also, if you can maybe shed some light on possible futuristic or coming technologies that would be able to address the same challenges or other challenges.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting question in respect of, as you know, Gabrielle said earlier, we have many different tools available to us today. So many of the things that we're doing in infrastructure, you know, we have some type of solution for. So if I go back to, you know, Daniel is really focused on the asset management aspect, and you know, how can we collate that information, how we do the operation and maintenance. And if we look at the kind of the mass rapid transport or the railway aspect of infrastructure, you know, there are solutions when we look at the actual rolling stock, for instance. So one thing is monitoring the structures that you built, and we can have, you know, once we've built that BIM model, we can put devices on that to seismically monitor, you know, how things are moving, if they're in place or not. So that's kind of the physical response information that you're getting. The next thing is the assets and operations, is how we managing those operations. And or when we look at the rolling stock, that's what's going to be going up and down the railway for the next several years to come. So how do we maintain those assets? So, you know, Trimble already has solutions for that. So if we look at one solution called Beanie Vision, which is looking at different aspects, it uses scanning solutions and devices where when the rail stock passes through certain waypoints, it will actually scan the integrity. For instance, it could be the rolling stock wheels that it's doing a scan, and then that automatically will feed back. So you've got constant monitoring of that stock rolling up and down on the track. So that's kind of one aspect of some technology that we have. Another one would be looking at the operations and maintenance of that rolling stock, which is a solution called Nexilla. And that really is a live maintenance solution. So it's monitoring different diagnostics on that particular rolling stock. And it could be, as you know, if you've got the manufacturer's spec of how things should be performing, is if there's a deviation from that manufacturing spec, it will signal that there's something not quite right, and that will signal ahead to the central control. And then, you know, when that train is completed, offloading passengers, whatever, they can be rediverted, you know, in for service and check it over. So, or even order parts, you know, on the fly to replace if something's breaking down. So that's kind of the operations and maintenance aspect of what was being discussed. On the side of Mr. Anoop, when we're talking about lots of different technology, how we can innovate. You know, Trimble as an organization, we have over 1,000 different patents related to various fields. And you know, bridges is obviously one aspect, and I obviously very focused on the bridge aspect. So when we look at, you know, a common solution nowadays is people are using laser scanning devices. So if we look at, you know, we mentioned earlier about, Gabrielle mentioned about bridges are falling down, typically not being dismantled. So when we're looking at maintenance, so having various devices that would actually do scanning of that infrastructure, and then we can see how we can maintain or redevelop that. So that's part of the BIM management process, or the maintenance processes, where we can look at revamping existing infrastructure by bringing that in and then redesigning or, you know, updating bridges. Then we have solutions like site vision is another one, where we can go to site and the engineers can be preloaded the design, where they're actually projecting a hologram essentially, but through your physical device, and you can see through exactly what's going to go in place in where you're constructing. There's many different solutions, to be fair, and it could be software or it could be hardware facilitated.
Yeah, that's good. And staying on the same topic and looking at those challenges from the perspective that we are seeing an increasing demand, as Paul highlighted in the beginning, in terms of infrastructure projects in the various parts of our regions and worldwide as well, because of what they drive in terms of value and growth to all the nations. So, Gabriel, if I may ask you about this point, do you see the industry of the infrastructure ready in terms of managing those challenges over the coming 10 or 20 years? And do you believe that the technology is also evolving in the same pace, which can actually help the construction professionals from their different perspective to manage and steer their way through those challenges?
Yeah, I think the industry it's ready and eager for it, and I really don't think we need to wait 10 or 15 or 20 years for that to happen. And the proof is that is already happening. And Mr. Anup said about the maybe delivering the models, and I bring yeah, we keep talking about the Roundtable bridge in Norway that has been designed, approved, and being built without one single drawing, right? And the VT4 in Finland, which is a 17 kilometers highway with 29 bridges, is a model-based construction, right? So they are doing it already. Now, the technology is evolving, but cannot evolve standalone. So let's say I put here things in a very simple way. The site vision for bridge inspection has been developed. The first adopters, I can give examples like Sweco, for instance, they are already using it. And Sweco is giving us feedback, right? So then the developers are going to develop even further to meet the industry needs. So what I'm talking about here is development and industry needs go hand in hand. I really hope this makes sense, but because the industry cannot wait for Trimble or other developers to come along with the 100% perfect solution. No, the solution will come because the companies, they see the opportunity, and then the users, so the industry, will give feedback and help to develop further. I give you then one more example is from those thousands of patents, and so many things are being invented, like Trimble sponsored a program, university program for photogrammetry to BIM. So the students with a cell phone, 4 hours were taking pictures with the iPhone of a bridge, and then with some algorithms, maybe 30 minutes, 1 hour of algorithms, they would producing the BIM model. Some technology is not yet in the market because this is a kind of technology that needs, for instance, thousands of examples for the learning machine, for the AI to kick. The great examples are there already. This is already happening, and I think the industry is driving this. So because we just sent the information or the tools out, and then I give you a good example. Octaviano is driving this because Octaviano is, let's say, twice a year asking for better development of software. Right, you know what I mean? And with the hardware, it's exactly the same. Just for operations and maintenance, I remember to have seen in a conference Trimble total stations being the police of the movement of a bridge. So they had those bridges, and it was critical, and they set up a station, a fixed station, total station, pointing. So I think we're two, right, for triangulation, pointing into the bridge, and then those total stations were the police. So every time the bridge moved more than what the designers thought it was acceptable, they would get an alert, and they will get all the data. So it's very inventive, and this comes from, it was the client who come along with this solution, just use the current technology for their needs. And I think it's enough.
Thank you, Gabriel. It's
Thanks.
a very comprehensive answer, and I think very fruitful for all the audience over here. And I thank you for bringing the fact that there is an adoption process that needs to happen down the line, and you brought a very good example or a couple of good examples from the Scandinavian or the Nordics part of the globe. And in our next topic, speaking about the adoption, I would like to address Octaviano on this part. So since you've been involved in different projects in both regions, India and the Middle East, I believe that you share the opinion that both parts of the region are actually pioneers in terms of adoption of new construction technologies, whether we're talking about the engineering side or the construction side. And when we talk about the implementation of technology across the different phases of the life cycle, we need to go part by part, because if we take that gradual approach, I think it's going to help us down the line achieve the goals and success that we are aiming for. So from your perspective, which areas we should be taking as priorities if we focus on our regions in terms of technology adoption and implementation?
Yeah, so as you know, our market is very competitive today. So, and we are spending a lot of time in modeling and also creating drawings. Let's go back to the previous subject. Today I could say we are spending maybe 20% of our time in the model and 8% on the time on the drawings. And I think the main investment we have to do today is find a way to remove those drawings, because we have all the models, we have all the information there. We don't need to keep producing those amount of drawings, for the construction purpose. Today we also have a project in Norway, a state cable bridge, and we are lucky actually to be involved on this project, because it's going to be very few drawings we'll be creating, and also we in terms of reinforcement we will have to produce no drawings for the reinforcement. So this experience, I would like to bring to Middle East, to share to our clients and to the set owners, and find a way to use this technology and these skills and start bringing this to our projects here in Middle East, because what's happening a lot of time to us here, the project's coming with a lot of pressure from the beginning, and we are doing modeling, and then we are already requesting drawings, but no, I cannot produce drawings if my model's not finalized yet, because the drawings will get affected, and this pressure is coming a lot. So I think of course we have to improve our communication as well internally and from the beginning to understand what the client's requirements are. What are the needs, but removing today the drawing, I think would save money for everybody, time of checking, and models there. Models is perfect. You can do all those checks like Gabriel said. People are already doing it. So we definitely needed to bring this opportunity here to Dubai, in Middle East, and Dubai and Saudi Arabia is already like in a very fast track in terms of technology. They wanted that. So we just need to, I think that's the main point today. We have the beam discussion is very, very big, but find a way to remove drawings today will reduce time and cost in most of our projects. And this will also do have to reduce the deliverable times, because, if you do model and drawings, the drawings, that's what's taking time today. This is going for a very long time, and it hurts our business, because the competitor is very, we are all on the same page, so we just need to find a way to find the solution to and support our clients, because they also want that.
Yeah, which also brings
Can I add something here? I'm sorry to interrupt. Lately, because of this Roundtable Bridge and VT4 and all these projects and more projects without drawings or just a couple of drawings, I'm thinking about this. How silly is when I close my eyes and I start thinking about the bridge, a landscape, a landmark bridge, beautiful, and then I take a pencil and I start doing a 3D sketch of that visualization. Right? And then when we go to design, we do everything in 2D. So we dismantle the idea of 3D into 2D. And then when we go for construction, we need to build again 3D. Do you know what I mean?
We are creating many steps, and we can go from one step straight to keep you always in 3D. We are trying to do that, and that's important. Is this go? And then the worst part is always we also need to deliver into the people request. Oh, you produce the drawings, but now I need the DWG file or DGN files. So why? We have the BIM model. Everything's there. Why you still need this 2D file that nobody ever will open? So we needed to find this gap. We need to close this gap, and we need to do this urgent because we are losing money, or losing time, and the software the technology is moving much faster than where we are now. We have all this technology. Artificial intelligence is coming now, robotics. We need to use this in our favor, and drawings definitely is not going to be is not going to have much space together with when we talk about BIM. I would say in future soon.
May I add something as well, very quick?
Yes.
Talking from the perspective of this existing infrastructure, and when we want to give this a step ahead to introduce BIM modeling with structures or infrastructure that was created years before, and this model didn't exist at that time. What we are trying to do is to implement this from the perspective of monitoring and creating models with, as you all mentioned, with the digitalization of models obtained by scanning, and these models of the existing infrastructure as well in mobile devices or drones or static stations will provide us with the first step of creating a 3D model that later on we can move with different steps in between, of course, to the BIM. And as well, the challenge to introduce some sensors, physical or chemical even, that we did on that type of structures, give an idea of why it's very important to start all these steps from the beginning. When we face that we have this infrastructure already, doing all this, it's really more complicated to do.
Yeah, indeed. Which I wanted to highlight on the same topic, the fact that when we're talking about adoption of technology and implementation of the technology, a fundamental part of that is questioning our own skill set as different stakeholders and different roles within the same stakeholder. I'm talking about people in the field, people in the office. Are we ready for this change or that technology adoption? Gabriel mentioned that we start 3D, we walk into 2D, and then try to construct from 3D again, as one example. So does that have a relation to the skill set that we have across the different roles or different stakeholders? So my question here to Dr. Daniel, from an owner perspective and a ministry perspective, since you deal with a wide spectrum of contractors, you have the large scale, the medium scale, and even the small scale, depends on the job and the portfolio that you're talking about. So how do you see those gaps in terms of skill set among the different implementers, and what initiatives the ministry has currently or maybe in the future in terms of advancing the skill set of all those stakeholders?
Okay, I want to address the answer into 2 points of view. And here, I think the panel is lucky to have points of view related to age. I grew and I was educated in a totally different technology stage than we have now. Engineer Soga is much more younger, so perception is also it plays a role here. And I remember when I was inspector for bridge condition and to assign bridge assessment condition, and I used to inspect those bridges and by the typical methodology and going to the bridge and moving and inspect. And at that time I didn't believe when the drones they could do or substitute these inspections. Today I am watching the application of that technology, and what I mean is that I am also learning day by day, because technology, as we mentioned here, it moves really quick. This is perspective from a person of my generation, let's say, my time. Regarding the contractors, then we need to come back to the point that if we are learning and we understand what we want, we from the administration needs, we can tell them what we need. And I cannot neglect the fact that in all the aspects, some contractors or some consultants, they do know what are we speaking about, and some others definitely know. And it's also a duty that I think the ministry is taking really seriously, to try to promote the knowledge in all levels. We have been doing these last years seminars and workshops, and this daily activities that we can promote the knowledge in different levels. And when we do that, we try to involve the most players we can, administrative, from the administrative part, different stakeholders, also contractors, consultants, laboratories, universities. They are really important in this part. And all together with the specialized people, we can keep filling these gaps, no? And as mentioned before, technology is moving really quick. No, one very small example in the previous contract we had to collect information with a cloud of points with a Trimble equipment. We were able to collect 700,000 points per second in a vehicle. The next year we were able to collect 1,200,000 points per second. That means in a matter of 1 year, technology evolved really quickly, and all these things we need to adapt to them. But definitely we are trying to go behind it, no?
Yeah. And on the same topic, Engineer Sorga, do you believe that with what is currently being done, implemented, since you're playing a key role in terms of setting the strategies and working on deploying those different strategies and requirement set, do you see that gap shrinking, increasing, being maintained the same way? So what's your opinion on that?
I feel like we have the technologies available and the specifications available, so there is no problem in keeping up with the technology. But I feel from a governmental perspective, there's a bit of like the mindsets, there's still resistance to change, because a lot of management, they think if something is working, then why should we change it? There's always resistance to change and change management. So this is the only difficult part, because UAE is well advanced, and there's already technology, programs in universities establishing AI, new techniques, and we're open to international inputs and engagements. But I feel like the mindset is hardly accepting these changes, and it just needs a little bit time. Like as my colleague Danielle mentioned, we are already doing seminars, engaging the stakeholders, and pushing for the implementation of different innovation technologies, especially that we are showing the benefits. Like we do a lot of pilot projects because there's resistance to change. Like, for example, we did the cold recycling for the asphalt. That was firstly not accepted, but when the results came and they supported the financial and environmental aspects, which also support the strategies of the country, there was more acceptance, and especially that it was cheaper as well in the long run.
Suddenly everyone is happy.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So being cautious on time, I would like to jump to the last couple of topics that we wanted to discuss. And Octaviano, you mentioned earlier, the technology needs to be constructible. That's one fundamental area that we need to look for when we choose any technology that we are planning to leverage throughout the engineering and execution of any project. So in your perspective, since you bring all that experience in terms of using technology and doing construction, what other criteria you set in terms of technology selection, which you believe that can drive the success and effectiveness throughout the project lifecycle?
Technology, I think we have no way to escape from the parametric modeling. We are fully connected on that. We we need to adapt the changes. So the changes are happening all the time, and we definitely need to use the parametric modeling for that, and we have excellent tools for this. We always need to keep up to date with what's coming next, as I mentioned before, and the other part of technology, is fix the communication, like the Soga said, the communication with the clients is important on that adoption of the technology, because if we cannot communicate together or agree the things together, everything is in place, but we are getting some barriers along the path in all the steps, from the designer, from the contractor point of view. So we are facing those difficulties in all the steps along the project, and we need to find a way to using the technology and the softwares to help us to close those gaps.
All right. And last but not least, Dr. or Mr. Anoop, I think.
Yeah, just to add to that when we talk of construction technology, we have a part in which we are designing the structures, and then there is a part where there is a lot of knowledge on deck erection part of it. So what I think is there should be more overlap between these two knowledge areas, and that will definitely bring out much more innovative solutions for designing and constructing the bridge.
Yeah, indeed. All right, thank you for that. And last but not least, I will end up with Pool Wallet. So if you want to tell us maybe briefly in terms of, in your opinion, what is the right time or right phase to deploy the technology during the construction life cycle?
At the very beginning, the obvious answer.
Totally agree.
Yeah, right. So that's the easy answer. I think, I really like what Soha said earlier about sustainability. And I think one of the big drivers, and as mentioned, what makes us do a change. And I think, in this region, we got the sustainability mandate. And that should be a precedent for how are we working in the construction industry, and how are we going to change, one of our wasteful industries. It's not very efficient. And this should help people drive in terms of adoption of different technologies. So at the very early phase, we're already utilizing GIS-based data, geospatial information. We're mapping out the corridors. We can design through technologies like corridor solutions like quantum. So if we look at India, for instance, very congested cities, how are we going to run a road or a rail line, through that effectively? So you've got to take on board all of these different parameters. If we look in the Middle East, okay, if we're out in Saudi, it's sand dunes predominantly, but then, you may hit into some mountainous areas like we have in the UAE. What's the best routing? Where do we get the less tunneling? Where do we do, the more bridges?
Yeah.
And so that helps you really plan efficiently. So that's kind of the initial start phase. But then taking that, how do we utilize that information? We can take that model and we can start to put it into our construction machinery at the very beginning of cutting that road, or it could be the tunnel, whatever it is. But we can utilize that information at the very beginning to drive and control our machinery. And the machinery, using different technologies, can actually look at where the grading is, where the position is, and whether it's a 2D elevation design or a 3D machine control that we're using. We can actually control that machine in very clever ways in terms of the dimensions in position in the world. But what we see in the Middle East right now, talking to SciTech, is machine control in our region is less than 1%, unbelievably. And in Europe, it's like 50%. So the adoption in the region, that has to change in order to meet these different sustainability goals. Cost savings in diesel alone across a project can be 50% less fuel used, and you can be 30% more efficient in the use of that machinery. So there's lots of different value impacts by deploying technology at the very beginning of the start of this project. And we actually have some really good data. So there's a few projects within the region. So if you look at, there was in Oman, there was a dualization project that was done, and they used the 3D grader control on the dozers to actually increase productivity. And the project at that time was behind the schedule. It was, failing. It was never going to meet the planning schedule. But they ended up finishing ahead of the schedule by using these different 3D grade controls that we have, and actually saving 17 million dirhams in equipment costs alone. And that excludes, the saving that I mentioned about diesel and less operators needed. So that's really one great example. And I like to talk about examples because that really proves the point. And that's what owners and contractors want to hear is, what am I saving? How am I benefiting? And another one was when we look at the asphalt paver. So we're laying road. So we have technology, it's called a PCS 900. It's a 3D total station. So you have fixed total stations, and then you have the prisms on the dozers. So that actually controls, and a 3D model within the cab actually tells them exactly where those 3D graders are at any particular, pavers, should I say, to any particular point in time. And then linked through this earthworks technology that we have, a great solution example of that was in a causeway in Kuwait, and they use this technology, and they had very strict requirements, and that particular implementation of technology saved them $20 million dirhams, sorry, in asphalt costs. So rather than using overestimating and using a lot of wastage, it actually managed to allow them to lay it very accurately and save a lot of money. So really the short note to that is the earlier on, the better. But we need to link it with that long range plan of why are we doing this? And if it's mandated by sustainability, that's a good driver for people to deploy technologies on their projects.
Yeah. Thank you for the comprehensive feedback, Paul. And at this point, we come to an end to our conversation today. It's been really an interesting conversation with all of you. And I believe personally that we actually need much more time to discuss all those various aspects. Actually, each one of those topics that we try to raise today can take at least an hour by itself to discuss and analyze. What we can maybe aim for, and telling our beloved audience about that, is maybe we'll be able to set some other sessions in the future talking about the same thing, because it is really an interesting topic for both the regions. So if you allow me to start from east to west, thanking you one by one. So first I'll start with Mr. Anup Singh from India for joining us today and making the time and the effort. Your opinions and knowledge are definitely a great intel for all of us. We all learned something new today. Personally, I did, and I believe all our audience share the same feedback. From UAE, I would like to thank Dr. Daniel Lert and Engineer Soga Salem. Also, I would like to thank Paul Wallet, Gabriel Neves, and ending up in the west side of the globe with Octaviano. Thank you all for making the time today. And a very big thank you goes to our audience and attendance today. Personally, I hope that you enjoyed the great conversation we had with our panelists. As mentioned earlier, this is a very big topic. It's a vast topic and requires many more hours actually to discuss and touch base on all the different aspects of it, which we will hopefully be arranging some more sessions in the near future talking about this specific part of the industry. I hope that you had a good day and very knowledgeable and informative day with the various sessions that we had, and looking forward to seeing you tomorrow to attend the various sessions that we have planned for tomorrow's agenda. Have a great time and see you soon. Bye-bye.